and welcome back to another edition of Uncaged. My name is Mike Larkin. You just heard in the beginning the 10 bell salute, and joined by my side, as always, is Daniel Crimmins. Daniel, this is going to be a tough one.
Yeah, it is. But you know what? We have the whole world in our hands. You know,
That we do. That we
you
do.
know, as wrestling fans and in life, you understand that people are gonna die. It's part of unfortunately it's part of life. Um, with Terry Funk passing the day before, we knew. Like, you knew he was in ill health, and I think Terry Funk was in his 80s.
He was 79, but also you have to remember this man had Parkinson's and Alzheimer's.
Yeah, so he was in advanced age, and everything he put his body through, and it's with so you knew what was coming given his age. But Bray, eh, say what you want about his in-ring work, so I know some people weren't fans of it, but one of the most creative minds in wrestling, and I don't care, who we are, like, one of the absolute best. Um, Knowing that it happened and knowing how young he was, this one hurt. Like 36, he's younger than me. I just turned 37, last month. And knowing that, he leaves behind, his partner, Jojo Opperman, um, two girls from his first marriage, a son, and I think he and Jojo also had a daughter. So he's got, four kids. Take the sports entertainment set out of this. These are four young children who now have to grow up without their father.
That's the worst part for anybody. I mean, we could talk about, like you mentioned, like the moments, memories, which we'll get to do in today's forum, but it's like the man had kids, he had a wife. Like, that's the thing. They don't get to see their dad.
Exactly. People say, well, they can still, they can see, his matches and this, not.
It's not
Well,
the
that's
same.
a character. You're seeing, the Husky Harris. You're seeing, the Bray Wyatt, the Fiend. You're seeing that. That does not replace the Wyndham Rotunda, their father. This is a son who's not gonna, if he gets involved in sports, he's not gonna have his dad at his games. The daughters, same thing. Whatever they decide to do, they're not gonna be able to have that. And the daughters, the stereotypical dad walks the daughter down the aisle. They're not gonna be able to have that. And the fact that he was so young, and what gets me is, people made so much crap. Oh, he's been gone for, 6 months, 7 months. He's had, and at the time it was rumored that it was mental health issues. And they said, well, they need to cut him. They need to cut him. This and that. Those people are awfully fucking quiet now. Pardon the language, and this bothered me. Like, you had people telling him that, saying, hey, cut him, this and that. But for those of you that, don't know or don't realize what had happened, over the years, Wyndham Rotunda had, I guess, a heart condition.
And he had gotten COVID earlier in the year.
Exactly. Earlier, I think it was short. See, Royal Rumble was January. Last time we saw him on TV was February, right? Like early February.
Yeah, he was cutting the promo about Bobby and Brock, and it was leading to Bobby Lashley and Brock and Bray at WrestleMania.
And then what had happened, I guess shortly thereafter, he had gotten COVID and I guess been in the hospital. And, people's feelings about COVID aside, it can, if you have a pre-existing condition, it can, doesn't mean it always will, but it can make that condition worse. Which, unfortunately, in Bray's situation, that's what happened. And Mike, I don't know if you know this, but Bray had been cleared to return 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing the announcement. Like he
Right.
was ready to go. Yeah, he
You
was
know,
ready to go.
they were firming up, creative, solutions. I'd heard maybe him and Cody were gonna do a thing, which I think would have been really interesting. Because you have the aspect, you have the family. They could have brought that in. Rhodes, Wyndham. You know,
Well, yeah, and also the fact that in WWE, like he was his pro on NXT when he was Husky Harris, so they could tie that in.
you have that, and I feel like it's, and we'll never know, and it's just really really tragic that, and it was so sudden.
Well, that's the thing that gets me too. You're positive, you're ready to go. The comeback is coming, and then all of a sudden you have a heart attack and then you die. Like
Yep.
tomorrow was never promised, but also that's why I said to people, like you could say, dude, tell people that you love them. Check on your people.
Exactly. It's so fleeting. It's and I'm not trying to downplay Terry Funk, but again, Terry Funk lived a very long life.
Yeah, that's the point. It's like, and also as we recorded, like Bob Barker just died, for God's sake. We just did our last show. We were talking about Bob Barker.
Yeah.
Bob Barker was 99. The man lived an amazing life. Terry Funk was almost 80. Bray Wyatt was 36. And we're not, like you said, we're not downplaying. It's just like he was so young and it was unexpected. It was a tragedy.
And he had, like, there was recent videos of him. He was in great shape. Like, he'd lost weight, had packed on muscle, and honestly, I would not have been shocked if he had come back at Payback.
I would not have been shocked either. I think that would have been the plan. I mean, as we see now, Cody Rhodes is going to be on the Grayson Waller effect. You could have inserted him there. Like, I don't know. I don't know, man.
And it's just, you talk about the tributes, and I thought what we saw from Impact put out a statement. I thought that was very classy because he never worked at Impact. They didn't have. They could have been like, he was never one of ours. And even AEW for what they did. And honestly, I really think we're gonna get something tomorrow night.
I think I think we're definitely going to get some sort of type of tribute, and we're going to see a lot of stuff there tomorrow. Yes.
And Wembley, open air stadium. So I mean, I got to imagine at some point we're gonna get Fireflies.
I can bet that. Absolutely. I could definitely see them doing something like that.
And I remember it was around 5:30, 6 o'clock on Thursday evening, and I remember I'm on a break at work, and I just remember scrolling. What do you always do? You always get the phone out, and you're scrolling through X or Twitter, that thing, whatever they're calling it these days. I'm still calling it Twitter, just as an aside. I think calling it X is stupid.
I still call it Twitter too, so don't even worry about it.
Stupid.
Stupid. But no, this ties into you and me because, like you mentioned,
Randy Orton GIF here.
GIF here. But here's the thing,
I just remember seeing that Triple H tweet, and I mean, I had to read it a couple of times. Like, I saw Mike Rotunda, and at first I thought, oh no, I thought it was him.
Right.
Like, I expected to say that Mike Rotunda had passed, but then it says, our family member for life, Wyndham Rotunda, also known as Bray Wyatt, has passed. And I remember thinking, like, oh. And thinking to myself, like, wait, he was so young. And like he wasn't like a steroid thing, he was not like drinking or anything like that. And it's just instantly you think, please, you hope it wasn't, that.
Yeah, I know where you're going.
But and I remember telling you, I was like, did you hear about this? Like,
Yeah, he texted me. Like I was still at work when you texted me, and you go, "Bray is dead." I'm like, "What? Like Bray?
Like, dude, Bray's dead."
Like what? Like no." And then I looked it up when you told me, and then I'm like, "Oh man."
Yeah. And I'll be honest, like my first thought was, is this real? Like, is this like a storyline? Because like, would it be outside the realm of WWE to do something like this?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because I remember in 2007, like the week after Vince, the limo blew up was the Benoit tragedy. And obviously, we didn't know the details of what happened at the time. But I remember seeing the graphic on there and I'm like, oh God, what are they doing now? And then you see Vince McMahon in the ring and then you realize, holy hell, it's real. But this one right here, it's just like you don't think that because, like you mentioned, he was ready to go. And
Like,
then,
oh,
yeah,
like
he was ready. And you hope, but the thing too, as well as I think, like you mentioned, what did it for everybody was Booker T was live on air on his show.
you know,
Brad Gilmore read it. He got choked up, and Booker T's like, "You're telling me that Bray Wyatt has passed away?"
yeah, and like because you see him like he's looking, as we do,
Hmm?
like he's looking at it and he's just like wow and Booker's kind of like what what's wrong and he says I don't even know if I should say this but Bray Wyatt Triple H just posted and he read the tweet out and like you can tell Booker is not comprehending it like he's not like it's not like hitting that like this guy is just suddenly and it wasn't like he'd gotten into a car accident or he was in the hospital and been really, really sick. I mean, we know now he'd been sick. Um, and I think when these sudden deaths happen, it's so easy. It's human nature to ultimately look back and think, okay, this is what it is. This is what he unfortunately maybe he committed suicide.
Right.
And I think, unfortunately, somebody in the family must have seen that or maybe because again it's human nature and I'm not saying it's right, I'm not excusing it, but it's easy to go there.
Yeah.
And then we got the follow-up maybe a couple hour or two later from Sean Ross Sapp, who said that he had gotten COVID earlier in the year and that he had already had a prior a heart issue and that made it worse and that he had a heart attack. So I think the one thing, and it is so cliche to say it, but it's true. I'm sure it was very quick.
Yeah. I mean, I can say here because my grandfather also died of a heart attack. I can say it. It was very, very quick. So yeah, I can attest to that.
And it's, you hope, it was a massive heart attack and, he just
Right.
dropped. Which, like that's how my dad went, but you hope that it's, I mean, I'm probably sure it probably was.
I mean, like Sean Ross Sapp said, I mean, it exasperated the ongoing health issues he was having, and then boom. Uh, for me, I will say this: like we were talking about SmackDown before we came on the air, I thought the tributes were great. I like that they brought Eric Rowan in because, again, just
Brought to.
of course, Braun too. You think of the Wyatt family; they showed the moments, and I think for what they did last night, especially LA Knight's promo, they did a very nice tribute for him.
Yeah.
And same with Terry Funk.
And you had Ray come out with the armband with the BW.
Yep, and
That's
TF. Yep,
classy.
that was very classy, and I mean. A lot of people don't realize like just how much he touched people's hearts, and I mean we'll get into his career here in a second and
Yeah.
talk about some of our favorite moments and memories, but that guy just like was just such a fun individual. People talk about their laughs and just he was just you see that video where he like goes and talks to the kid, he like removes the barricade and he high fives the kid. It's just that was the guy, that was the man himself. So
It was Wyndham Rotunda.
Linda Rotunda.
Um, and the director of creative, I guess, who is the guy that they brought in, with Bray, uh, he even said like that first promo back after Bray returned, that wasn't a Bray Wyatt promo. That was a Wyndham Rotunda promo. Like that was, who he wanted to be. He wanted to be him, and like that's emotion. You can't fake that. Like you can't. You can't. It was organic. It was him. And I thought it was overall, it was very well done. You could tell that LA Knight was pretty choked up.
I mean, not besides the fact that that was his last official feud, but I mean, like you mentioned with the promo, like you could tell Bray Wyatt was happy to be back. He was excited and he got himself rejuvenated. And I mean, for LA Knight, I mean, even what I liked about it was him being very real, but he also incorporated into the promo with the Miz, like to quote a wise man, "Miz, you should run." So I
Yeah,
thought for what he did, it was great.
exactly. And how he's was talking about it, and he said, Miz, as a great man once said, the next time you see me, and then just looking directly into the camera, run. And he didn't just say it simply, like he kind of got a little gravel in his voice, just like Bray used to do, and just run. And I know a lot of people were hoping that, Bo Dallas was going to come out as Uncle Howdy and all that. Sure, it would have been nice, but, at the same time, he just lost his older brother not 24 hours before.
And I mean, I equate it to Chavo Guerrero with Eddie. Like as soon as that happened, Chavo Guerrero was Kerwin White at the time. Kerwin White went away. Like I'm like, no, I'm Chavo Guerrero again.
And, Bo Dallas, no, it's a difference here because Chavo was already there. Like he was at the show, like he was in town. Bo, I think, lives in Florida, and I think they were in Kentucky, maybe.
Yes, they were in Louisville, Kentucky last
Yeah,
year.
and so he wasn't there, and realistically, he was probably with Bray's family.
Yeah, he was probably still grieving and mourning his brother.
Now, is that to say that we'll never see the Uncle Howdy character? Who knows?
Who knows?
Would I like to see them do something? Like, I'm sure Wyndham told them, kind of told Bo like what the plan was, what, kind of what he wanted to do. And I was watching. There's a guy I follow on TikTok, but he was talking about Bray and how the sister Abigail, and Jay White has what was it, the Blade Runner?
Blade Runner, yep.
To me, it's not the Blade Runner. It's Sister Abigail.
Oh, it is absolutely.
And just the way that Bray used to hit it, like just
Whiplash.
and the whole kissing the forehead, like I gotta think somebody's gonna use it either tomorrow night at All In, or somebody's gonna use it going forward. I kind of thought LA Knight would have used it last night.
Uh, he might. I mean, the way I look at it too, and I saw Rowan there. What I would really like to see, because, and it's crazy to think about this, folks, but they are the last two members of the Wyatt family that are left. Brody Lee died in December of 2020, Bray in August of 2023. It's almost similar timing. I would love to see if they, after Braun comes back from injury, Braun and Eric Rowan really honoring the legacy of the Wyatt family and being a team.
Well, to be fair, we also have Brian Danielson,
Okay, all right, you're gonna we'll talk about that, but still, yes. Okay.
Orton,
Randy Orton, yes.
technically,
Alexa Bliss.
yeah, and also at one point, there had been talk of the person that is now Luchasaurus being part of when they had him.
Well, if you remember, like the early stages, if you watch it from like FCW before the NXT came involved, they originally put Eli Cottonwood with him very briefly.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Good old Eli Cottonwood talk about his mustache. I don't have one, but I have a mustache. He was with Bray Wyatt very briefly for the FCW run, but then they originally put Harper and Rowan in there.
And
Um,
it couldn't have gotten any better.
couldn't have gotten any better. No.
The only thing, and I will say this, I live in Buffalo, New York. Brody Lee is from Rochester. About hour and a half or so away. And they wanted Brody to do, the southern kind of accent. He can't do it.
Speaking
He
of,
even told them. He said, guys, I'm from Rochester. Like, I can't do a southern. And you saw some of the vignettes. He tried, and it didn't sound good.
I can speak as a fellow New Yorker, both you and I, folks. We can't do Southern accents. It doesn't work.
We try, and it just sounds condescending.
It sounds like dick. I'll be honest, and excuse my language, but it sounds very dickish. You know what I'm saying? We sound very condescending. It doesn't sound natural.
It's like when people try to do the New York accent.
The New Yorkers, we're also the coffee talk.
Yeah, like if you're not from here, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it, bro. And bro, bro, that's our thing. Like that's New York.
That's what we do here in New York.
That's been true, so bro.
Bro.
But going back to Bray, like the tributes were really nice. I don't know if you saw what Seth Rollins posted.
Well, you were talking about the importance of family and being with your baby girl. Yep.
And like you could tell, even he would, because the Shield and the Wyatt family.
That was one of my favorite feuds in like the early stages because, dude, Elimination Chamber comes, they didn't even do anything, and they're chanting, "This is awesome."
Yeah, and you have that, and to see him get, Alexa Bliss put out something, and like you could tell, even she was kind of, and she said she wanted to be there, but she's pregnant. And B, she said that, she looked at the flight situation and she didn't think, she said there was no way, given that it was last minute, that, she was going to get there in time.
My guess is she would have to take like a red eye, and that would be a lot.
Oh, those aren't cheap.
I know. I've been on red eyes, folks. It's not cheap at all.
Even that, like last minute flights, they will jack up the prices.
Mm-hmm.
And people say, well, they could have sent the jet for it.
Really?
For one person.
Just stop.
Could they have? Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I think what they said, what she said, what Seth said, what Becky said, what everybody said was very, very nice. Absolutely. Yeah. You could tell like he was so beloved, much like Brody Lee. But the thing for me too is, man, like when you think about Bray Wyatt, you not only think about one of the most creative geniuses out there, but from someone who went from Husky Harris to this character, like the transformation was just absolutely amazing.
Oh yeah. And you could tell that he was not comfortable as Husky Harris.
No.
He was, and you always have, like, look at Undertaker, for example. When he was Mean Mark Calloway, he was not him. It wasn't who he was. But every so often, a wrestler will they'll hit a mark. Like they'll find something, and then it's, to borrow a phrase, you literally have the whole world in your hands. And I remember seeing the vignettes, some of his NXT stuff, because back then, NXT wasn't on the network. It was on, I think, Hulu.
Yeah, I remember having to watch it other ways to see that show back in 2013. It was always on Hulu. It was never on TV.
And you always hear about this guy, this Bray Wyatt. And first you hear that name and you think,
Bray Wyatt?
what kind of name is... And then I remember you start seeing the vignettes on Raw and you're just like, okay, cool. All right. And then I just remember seeing the last one where, you're at the compound and then got the cameraman's in the room and you just hear Bray say, "You made it." And then it cuts out and then you see the lights go out and you see Harper and Rowan, and then you see Bray with the lantern, and he just says, "We're here."
And the crowd went nuts. And I think the best way to debut him, if there's any opponent who he's going to feud with for his first feud, Kane was the one.
It was perfect. I think in the last couple years of Kane, I think that the brief Bray Wyatt feud was the best he had.
At that time period, I mean, you're coming off a Team Hell No, so this was the best thing he had.
Yeah. And realistically, I think they could have made it go a little bit longer.
I remember being very interested with the Ring of Fire match. Obviously, it's Inferno match without burning your person on fire because, again, you couldn't do that at the time. So it was just, I mean, it was interesting. I thought it was different. Did you like the Ring of Fire?
Overall, like the presentation was cool, but I mean,
It's not.
you'd never seen a Inferno match end like that. Like
No.
them putting a blanket over the fire and getting in the ring.
Yeah, I mean, for what it was good. But I mean, after that, I mean, it's funny to see like the early stages of when they became to the main roster with the Wyatt family. Like they went from that. There was like a brief thing with the Miz, but then the Miz got hurt, so they had to scrap that. And then he wrestled Kofi Kingston. And then I remember the big feud that came after that was the Daniel Bryan feud because of he got Bray Wyatt, he got Daniel Bryan to join the Wyatt family. And let's talk about this moment, the cage match with the Usos when Daniel Bryan turned and beat up Bray Wyatt. That crowd reaction was awesome.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And it was like, and honestly, I would say that was one of Daniel Bryan's best WWE feuds.
Well, for me, and I will state this fact always, Bray Wyatt and Daniel Bryan from Royal Rumble 2014 is one of the best doggone matches on that show.
Oh yeah. And like 2014 was a wild year for WWE.
Oh yeah.
You look at everything that happened in that year, and that was one of the best pay-per-view matches.
It was. And I mean, then you go to the Shield feud, like we mentioned, they don't even touch This Is Awesome. Two of the hottest groups at that time coming together. People wanted to see it.
And to me, we talk about moments, and Bray Wyatt's WrestleMania debut entrance, with you have Mark Crozier and the Rels, singing the theme, and like to me, of all the Bray Wyatt themes we've had, to me, that one it was perfect. Like it fit the Bray Wyatt character to a T. And the thing is, like, that wasn't written for him. That was like he found it in a catalog, and he liked the sound of it, and he went to Triple H and and the NXT folk. And he says, "Hey, I really like this track. Can we use it?" And they listen to it, and you hear, and you're just like, "Okay, this," and it worked.
I remember first hearing that in NXT, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's the doom, 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 like
Yeah.
it was great. And I mean, like you mentioned with that entrance, especially being his WrestleMania debut against Cena. Now, people always talk about the outcome. And I mean, I'll say this right now. I feel Bray Wyatt, as we all know, should have won that. But I still enjoyed it. What?
Oh
Go
yeah.
ahead. But I still enjoyed it. It was
Same
good.
here.
And the thing that also encap the first Cena feud, and we'll talk about the Firefly Funhouse here, but the first Cena feud that he had there, it went to the Extreme Rules with the cage with the kid, and then the Last Man Standing. Like that feud wasn't bad.
We talk about the appearance of the kid. What
Yeah.
precipitated that was a Monday Night Raw. I think it was actually in St. Louis, maybe. I
You
feel like it was St. Louis.
talk about the
We
choir.
see the cage is down. Cena's talking about,
Yep.
how he needs to contain Bray Wyatt and what Bray Wyatt stands for. Lights go out, and then you just hear kids singing. He's got the whole world in his hands, and it symbolized, what Cena represents. Cena was always for the children, and the youth. And then the lights come back on, and you see a children's choir, and they're all just singing, "He's got the whole world in his hands." To me, that was Chef's Kiss perfect. And then you see Bray Wyatt come out, lights go out again, they come back on, they're all surrounding the ring, and all the kids are in sheep's masks. And that was perfect.
It fit, and I what I loved about it too is as well because it signified and symbolized the feud. And also, what I look at it from a stance too as well. What's interesting after the John Cena feud, like he went right into. It's interesting because I think he went away for a little bit. Like I don't remember anything after that, but I remember the Dean Ambrose feud was like right after that. You know, he came out and attacked him in the Hell in a Cell. Were you a fan of the Dean Ambrose feud? Because he did talk about Dean's father, and then they had those matches. Were you a fan of the Dean Ambrose feud that came after this?
Not as much, because I mean, honestly, and we always talk about fantasy booking. WrestleMania 30, honestly, I would have switched some participants around. I would have had Brock Lesnar versus Cena, and I would have had Bray Wyatt versus Undertaker, and I would have had Bray Wyatt be the one to break the streak.
I mean, for me, and I'm going to say this because I did mention I missed one here. So before Dean Ambrose, now I'm going to say this because we'll get to Brand Undertaker here. The Jericho feud, where we had the cage match and we had the two matches. Did you like how when Chris Jericho came back, that was the first person that they paired him with, Bray Wyatt?
Oh yeah,
I think it really elevated him a lot.
Jericho. We'll have to do an episode on him, next season.
Yeah.
But Jericho is one of those guys. He can work well with anybody.
I mean, for God's sake, the man put JTG over. For God's sake.
He had an incredible match with Nick Gage, and I'm a Nick Gage fan.
Mm-hmm.
But and it worked, and we talked about the promos, and the tributes to Bray, but let's quickly bring up Jericho had a Fozzy show yesterday in England, and he got the whole crowd to sing "He's Got the Whole World in His Hands."
That was great. That was very special. I like that tribute.
And that was classy. And people say, well, that's an AEW guy.
Who cares? He wrestled.
MJF did an interview. I'm just gonna make this quick remark. MJF did this interview not long ago where he basically said, there is no animosity between us and WWE guys. It's non-existent. He said if they're successful, it pushes us to be successful. If we're successful, it pushes them. He said, and it creates more opportunities for people to find work.
And he's 100% right. He even said in that interview, I know which one you're talking about. He's just like, you guys think that we all hate each other. We actually want everybody to succeed.
Tribalism, and he even said tribalism in wrestling is stupid.
Very much stupid. Very much stupid.
And so it was nice to see him. But the Jericho feud was really, really good.
I think they also incorporated that in Talk Is Jericho. Remember, he called in on an episode of Talk Is Jericho, and they pushed the feud to his podcast.
Yeah, and it worked. And Bray was a talker. Like he knew how to talk.
I think that also kind of brings us to now for me it was interesting because when we got to 2015, like his feud with The Undertaker, and even before that, like they did him and Brock Lesnar like briefly when they went over to Japan. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, it's a shame we never got like a feud or like a match with them that was longer than what it was. But the Undertaker feud, first of all, great first opponent for Bray Wyatt and the Undertaker to come back since the WrestleMania 30 loss. He is the one that really made that feud. Those promos and then the chair being lit on fire, just the casket doing it from the casket at Fastlane. Like he made that match like you wanted to see Bray Wyatt and the Undertaker.
Exactly, and it's a testament to who he was as a wrestling mind. Like there's not going to be another one like him.
Not at all. And I mean, like you mentioned, should Bray Wyatt have went over there? I mean, it would have been a nice passing of the torch, but we did get later that year. Were you a fan of the Wyatt family against the Brothers of Destruction?
Yeah.
Me too. Like that, like having, and it's crazy to think about this, and I'm gonna try not to get choked up here, but it was Bray Wyatt and Luke Harper who took them on at Survivor Series. Like, come on now, man. Like that was perfect.
And it was, and it's you can argue say Bray should have been the one to end the streak, and personally, I've made this argument that it should have been him, but when you look at the mind, like you said, he made that whole promo, that whole feud by himself because there was a whole thought, well, is Undertaker gonna show? Like, because nobody had seen him. Like, he hadn't been on Raw, he hadn't been on SmackDown, he hadn't been really publicly seen all that much. Like, you weren't sure, like, because let's be real, Mark Calloway was messed up
Oh yeah,
after WrestleMania 30. Like, after he had gotten to the back, he collapsed.
and he had to go to the hospital. Yep.
He went, and Vince, it was bad enough to the point where Vince McMahon left WrestleMania.
To go.
And never happened. Brock Lesnar left WrestleMania to be right there. Brock didn't even change out of his ring gear.
I remember.
And that goes to show how serious it was. So he didn't know. And I remember Fastlane, and you hear the lights go out, and you hear the gong, and you think,
Oh wow.
he's back.
Yep.
And you see the casket, and you're thinking, like, okay. And then you see it wheeled out to the ring, you're like thinking, like,
Here we go.
what's going? And then for it to open, and you see Bray sit up and do the taker.
It was so good. It was really, really good.
And I mean, the whole chorus of boos.
Like, you son of a bitch. It was so good. Like,
It was
there's a feeling. Yep.
It was
Chef's
amazing.
kiss. And it was like, there's a wicked feeling in the night. Can't you feel it, everybody? Like, that is what started that great feud. And I mean, he would go on later that year to feud with Roman Reigns and the Wyatt family against him and Dean Ambrose. And they brought Jericho in for that. For me, I like this time period because then you get to 2016, and we have to talk about it because the big feud of 2016 with Bray was the New Day feud, where it was him, Eric Rowan, and Braun against them. Not as good as the Hardy compound, but what were your thoughts on the Wyatt compound?
For what it was, it was clear. It was clear what it was. It was their attempt at doing a final deletion. They tried.
They did try. And I mean, it's interesting, like, to think about this time period because, like, what really became big for Bray during 2016 was going over to SmackDown, the feud with Randy Orton. Randy Orton infiltrates the Wyatt family, and then he turns on him. What were your thoughts on the introduction of Bray Wyatt and the Wyatt family with just him and Luke Harper there, and then here comes Randy Orton? What were your thoughts on Randy Orton and the Wyatt family?
It was weird, but it also to see Harper turn face. Also at that time, we also got Bray Wyatt winning
the
WWE Championship against AJ Styles, which to me was weird because honestly, I felt he should have been the one to pin Cena. It should have been him.
Agreed. It's interesting because I want to bring up this point to you as well. A lot of people that year, I know it was Bray and Randy at that WrestleMania. A lot of people thought it should have been a triple threat with Bray, Luke, and Randy, and I would have loved that.
Absolutely should have been.
Absolutely should have been. Like, they were pushing Luke Harper. It worked. It should have been. He should have been in that match.
Yeah, but you know what? And this video has been shared ad nauseum. Bray winning, you seeing him, and you have AJ going for the phenomenal forearm, and Bray just catching it into Sister Abigail, and Bray's reaction when they hand him the title, like, and you hear the fans, and even the following week on SmackDown, hearing the "You deserve it," because folks, let's be real. Typically, WWE champions have been big, muscular, have looked a certain way. You look at guys like Stone Cold, like Cena, Brock, people like that. There are some people that do not fit the mold of WWE superstars. Guys like Mick Foley, guys like Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson, whatever you want to call them. Bray Wyatt, these guys do not fit the mold of what a WWE champion should typically look like. And Bray was somebody that was told, no. It's just not going to work. And yes, it was a short run, a lot shorter than it should have been. That's a whole nother thing. But it was somebody who they took a chance on, and it worked.
For me, it's interesting because you say, like, I agree, like, it should have been longer than what it was. But I mean, then he gets traded to Raw, and unfortunately, there was, illnesses around this time as well, and we didn't get the conclusion of it. But Bray Wyatt and Sister Abigail, same person, same spirit against Finn Balor and his demon. What? Yeah, it happened. What were your thoughts?
I wasn't, if I remember right,
Yeah.
it's TLC.
Yes, it was TLC.
And
Yep.
wasn't it like an outbreak of like meningitis or
It
something?
was like a meningitis thing, and Bray Wyatt was one of the people that got sick.
Actually, no.
What?
No, actually, yes, it was him. It was him. For a second, because I know it was supposed to be him versus Finn Balor,
And then it turned to Finn Balor and AJ Styles.
which honestly was a good match.
It was a very good match.
Then I remember that same pay-per-view.
Oh no.
I'm talking about, I think it was Kane and the New Age Outlaws versus the Shield.
It was Kane, Braun Strowman, and I think whatever.
Actually.
Yes, and then you talking about Kurt Angle joining the Shield,
And you see Angle dressed up, and you just see him smiling like a goof.
he looks like I'm gonna hang with the cool kids today. Woo!
He's that nerd who's never been, and he's now sitting with the football team.
He's sitting with the cool kids,
And he's like,
look at me. Yes.
I mean, he admits, he was out of place.
Absolutely, but yeah, no. The back to Bray Wyatt, the Bray Wyatt feud with Finn Balor. I was fine with it, but I was very okay, like from a logistic standpoint, like Sister Abigail was dead, but the spirit of Sister Abigail was inside him, and they tried to do like a split personality thing with it. It didn't work for me. Like I didn't, you know what I'm saying? Like from a logical standpoint.
I wonder what would have been, unfortunately, it's one of those things we'll never know.
Right. But
Now, a lot of people, and I've even talked about this, had pushed for Valhalla, Sarah Logan.
Sarah Logan, yeah.
She on the Independence was known as Crazy Mary Dobson.
Mhm.
People were saying bring her in as Sister Abigail, and I think at one point there was talk of it.
Yeah, and then nothing occurred to that. Then remember she was in the Riot Squad.
And now she's a Viking.
Which makes sense because of her husband, but
And they do follow that lifestyle, which
yeah.
But again, it's one of those things we'll never know. We'll never know what could have been.
And for me, like, it's interesting because then he does the Seth Rollins feud, which was short, and then 2018, the big one was the Deleter of Worlds, him and Matt Hardy as a team, which I loved it.
It's the ultimate deletion, and that match gets crapped on so much. I loved it.
Well, Jeff Hardy he's got the whole world in his hands.
And as Brother Nero, which again, that was another thing. Missed opportunity.
I have to bring this to you because Matt Hardy did a nice tribute. He said that Maxwell at the time, his favorite wrestler was Bray, and he gave him the lantern from that deletion match, which I thought was nice.
Even Rebby. She did the music for, Live in Fear, did the. And we talk about that match, and let's not forget, it also had the only WWE appearance of Senior Benjamin.
Benjamin, yes. Now, were you a fan of the tag team? Because if you remember at the time, they were the tag champs, but then the B team stuff. First of all, I know they went from faces to heels, but my favorite match of that run was the B team with Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel against them. And Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel doing the parody of both of them. And Bo Dallas doing Bray Wyatt's. And Bray Wyatt had this big smile on his face.
And it's sad we never got the Bo Dallas Bray Wyatt feud.
I think, if I remember correctly, Dan, they only had a match one time, and it was on NXT in 2013, like the early stages, but you have to watch it on Hulu. They only had one match, one singles match.
I feel like that is a feud that it could have worked.
Oh, because of the Brotherhood. Yeah, absolutely.
And, now we had Uncle Howdy versus, and Bray. But when we look at Bray and everything, and that whole thing, people thought, oh, there's no way he can get over as a face. He did.
Yes, he did.
We get him tossed in the Lake of Reincarnation.
Yep.
And then, And I remember thinking, I think it was WrestleMania was. That was in Nolans.
Collins, yes.
So I think that was like Mania 30. Was that 33?
Okay, so
So 31
2006,
in New Orleans, 31
34.
in California.
Yep,
This was in Santa Rosa, Santa Clara.
something like that. But yeah, no, it was WrestleMania 34 was the one where with the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal.
And I remember the last three was Matt, it was Corbin, and I think it was Mojo.
Yep,
And then the lights go out, it's Bray. And I remember you're thinking like,
I was going after Matt.
yeah, exactly. And then you see him go after, Mojo and Corbin. It's like, okay. And then you think, oh, well, he's in the match now. And then it's just like the bell, and I'll say it's that ending. Like, honestly, I don't think they even knew what was going on. Because like
Yeah, it was a delayed bell reaction. Like, oh wait, Matt Hardy.
it's like, oh, okay.
But that's the thing too. You talk about him being face. I do remember, if you recall, like after WrestleMania 32, they turned the Wyatt's faces very briefly to feud with the League of Nations. Rusev and Alberto and all of them, and Wade Barrett and everybody in that. Yep. Like we had that, but if you recall, Wade Barrett got fired, or he quit, and then it was just the three of them. But oh man, like what could have been there? And for me, like you go from 2018 to the leader of worlds, and then he's not around for a while, and then this little vignette comes up, folks, and then the Firefly Funhouse happens, and your reaction when you
That
first
it was very brief, but we had a brief tag team of Roman Reigns and Bray Wyatt.
we did, which one?
They did it on a couple weeks on Raw.
Oh, was this in 2016 where they were feuding with the League of Nations?
Yeah, and
Oh,
even if you remember, once they had split, the Shield had split, and that whole thing. Briefly, we saw, Roman and Bray kind of team up, and it just felt like that could have been something. They could have done like a feud, but then I remember it was 34, 30. But anyway, you see the Firefly Funhouse, and I remember thinking like, we're really gonna turn Bray Wyatt into Mr. Rogers.
it was like a cross between Mr. Rogers and Pee Wee Herman
It was Mr. Rogers on meth.
on acid.
Like, take every drug known to man, mix it up into one, and just, Tony Montana the damn thing.
Well, then he made it work because it was funny skits, and then it built to the Fiend being introduced.
Exactly. And, you hear him, the first couple, you hear him talking about him
Hmm.
when he gets here. And then you have the Fiend randomly attacking people, and, you start using the mandible claw.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear Mick Foley and how honored he was that Bray wanted to use it.
And I mean, he even used it on Mick Foley when he attacked him as the Fiend. Yep.
And I thought that was really nice. That was nice to see that.
For me, what I loved about the original incarnation of the Fiend was, first of all, the first feud was Finn Balor, which made sense because of their history, and he's going back to people that he's feuded with. But the fact that Finn got squashed the way he did made perfect sense with how and the entrance. The first time you see the entrance, it's like, holy crap, his head is in the lantern and everything. Like that first match, the debut as the Fiend, that match was incredible.
Exactly. And you know what? It was the head of the cult leader, Bray Wyatt.
Mm-hmm.
And then, that led us to, and we got to talk about it. We got it.
We're going there.
It was arguably the worst Hell in a Cell match of all time. And it's not their fault.
It's not.
We're talking Bray Wyatt versus the Fiend Bray Wyatt against Seth Rollins. The only time that a Hell in a Cell match ended in a disqualification.
Well, that was because he used the gavel on him. He used everything. He's like going all nuts on him, and then the ref's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! That's enough. We're gonna stop this." And I'm like, "The Hell in a Cell match.
So, and I think you and I had talked about that, when we were first kind of chatting, it's like, so chairs are fine.
Yeah, chairs are fine.
Are fine.
Fine.
The steps,
Fine.
but a hammer.
But a hammer.
You draw the line.
That's where you draw the line. The big hammer.
Pickaxe are fine.
Yes.
But no, the hammer. That's where the ref, as a rep, you're like, huh? Yeah. I don't like this. No. Yeah. Ring the bell. It's over.
That's it. No hammer. What are you doing, man?
And I think because the reaction, and they both, Seth has even talked about it since he said that they shouldn't have gone. That should not have been the finish that night.
Well, the best is you have to remember with the reactions. X-Pac was the best one watching that at the watch party. He's like, "We're gonna do a DQ to Hell in a Cell match." Like X-Pac had the best reaction to that.
Exactly, and it's like, and then we got, and I think, and this is an instance where I love wrestling fans. They forced the hand. I don't think there was ever supposed to be a rematch.
Well, the match in Saudi was way better than the Hell in a Cell match, of course. That led to the Fiend winning the title. That was a great moment. That's probably one of my favorite moments in the history of them doing crowd.
And to me, you talk about perfect ways to end shows.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember Seth yeets him into an electrical box, and you think that's it. Seth's gonna win it, and that's it's gonna be that.
Nope.
And then so he gets down there, and then you just see like something like straight out of a Halloween movie. Michael Myers sitting up, and you see Bray just standing up, the Fiend just standing up beside him, and that mask, who was, again, if you don't know, was created by horror icon Tom Savini. And then locks in the mandible claw, and I'm trying to remember, did he hit Sister Abigail, or was he?
No, he hit the mandible claw, then Sister Abigail for the 3.
And then he has the title, on the stage, and you just hear the sound effect and the lights, and you just see him holding the title,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes off the air with the laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And that leads us to
Daniel Bryan.
And yep.
I mean, for me,
the weird. we don't get the Fiend versus Daniel Bryan. We get, Mr. Rogers, Bray Wyatt, in the Firefly Funhouse, Bray.
Wait a minute, hold on. Before we even get to that, I like the fact that we got him and Daniel Bryan because of the fact that it caused Daniel Bryan to go back to that place. He goes back to old hair, Bryan Danielson from Ring of Honor. Matches were great, but what Daniel's referring to is we got Bray Wyatt the first time I think he ever wrestled as Firefly Funhouse Bray against The Miz. He goes after The Miz and his family, and he's just acting all like, "Woo, I'm really excited for this, guys. Yeah." And then he beats The Miz, and Miz has no idea what to make of this. Like that, I thought was hilarious.
And let's also not forget that at the time when he won the title as the Fiend, the Universal title was a Raw brand title and was on the red strap. Bray, of course, introduces the blue.
Yep.
And then in what is one of the strangest looking custom titles I've ever seen, has the Fiend title.
I love that they incorporated that with the character.
Again, that was also created by Tom Savini.
And it was great. Like I'd never seen something like that. Or how we talked about the big skull, the skull, smoking skull bell with Austin. Yep. This was cool. Like I like the whole design of it because it fit the character.
It did, and it wouldn't have worked with anybody else. Like it's not like when The Rock held the smoking skull, or when Taker had it, or when Mankind had it for a day.
Yeah,
it worked, and it's just. Then we get.
Well, before we even get to that, I will say this. Before I know where you're going, Bray Wyatt and Daniel Bryan in the strap match, another Royal Rumble classic from 2020. Definitely go out of your way and watch it. I enjoyed it. They worked very well there. And then the Goldberg thing happened.
Which, I know Goldberg took a lot of shit for that.
So he said in an interview, just to paraphrase what Daniel is saying here, Goldberg said, "I got on the plane, I was losing, and then when I got there, the finish was changed, I was winning." And he didn't want to do it.
He didn't want to. He said he thought it was stupid. He says, you have a guy who is red hot.
And you want me to beat him.
And then you have me, an old man.
Who's a part-timer.
Who can't get people over in the jackhammer anymore.
Well, let's talk about that. Jackhammer was
And people thought Bray sandbagged him.
No.
Bray wouldn't have done that.
And my thing too is, if you remember at the time, like they wanted Roman and Goldberg for Mania. That was a Vince thing. He wanted Roman and Goldberg, and that's why we got that. But there was a plus side. Spear versus Spear. But then Roman, because of the COVID starting, folks.
But you know what? Sometimes things happen for all the, good things can come out of bad. And it's unfortunately Goldberg, instead of getting Goldberg and Roman, which I think Roman still was gonna win that. If that had happened, would we have gotten the tribal chief?
Well, my thing too is to add to your point there, and you make a great point as always, Mr. Daniel Crimmins. It was the perfect story of Roman coming back a year after, beating leukemia, and him winning back something that he never lost, being the world championship there. I think he would have beat him, and I don't even know if we would have gotten the tribal chief. But I mean, it's a blessing in disguise because we got later in the summer. And for Bray Wyatt's case, like the fact that we got John Cena, and let's talk about this because it's always gotten mixed reviews. The Firefly Funhouse was one of the most biggest mind-boggling, mind-fuckery, if you will.
And I remember, I think you and I were messaging that, and we both said, What was this? What hell would we just see?
It was a mindfuck, but it made sense of getting into one's psyche. And it was different. And you needed something different because, again, the world is shut down. I don't even know if this is what they were originally going to do in a stadium, but at the same time, it was very creative. You got to see John Cena go from 02 to 03, looking like Hogan in the 80s, looking like Hogan with Bischoff. Like, it worked. And Bray Wyatt rewriting his own history, and of course, The Fiend, him counting for The Fiend 1, 2, 3, and the infamous Titus O'Neil. I don't know what I just saw.
I think that was the correct reaction there. And I mean, this was what, Mania 36, right?
Yeah, this was the COVID Mania, if you will.
We talk a lot about wrestling records, and AEW is getting ready to break one tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Great for them. Seriously, awesome for them. Nobody's ever going to break the attendance record for WrestleMania 36. No one's ever going to do it.
I mean, like I said, well, in a way, it gave us a blessing of the first time we saw 2 nights of WrestleMania because that works perfectly than just sitting there for all those hours.
It did. It worked.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, I think New Japan did it, or did they do it before that? I think they did it before that.
Yes, they did. And
it worked. And you know what? For what it was, WrestleMania 36 was actually pretty good.
I mean, Rhea and Charlotte, Undertaker and AJ Styles. I mean, there was some Drew and Brock.
I'd heard that initially the Firefly Funhouse was going to be kind of like an Extreme Rules kind of thing.
That's what I was thinking when he first announced it. I'm like, okay, is this like some type of Extreme Rules Falls Count Anywhere type of deal?
I think the Boneyard match was initially supposed to be kind of like a Buried Alive match.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting too because with Bray and Cena, it fit the feud perfectly with Bray getting his revenge. And I think for you, a lot of people are very critical about it, but I think for the way that they ended the Cena feud after 6 years, it worked perfectly.
Exactly, like to borrow a phrase from Cody, it finished the story.
And the story kept on going because what were your thoughts of? Because Braun Strowman was the one to beat Goldberg. They brought him in to beat Goldberg. And the Braun Bray feud, it goes from Firefly Bray to Cult Leader Bray to finally the Fiend. And then the Fiend, which would lead to Roman Reigns coming back and starting the Tribal Chief thing. What were your thoughts on the Braun feud?
You know what? I enjoyed it. It got a lot of crap. And I remember the Swamp House, or the swamp fight.
The Swamp Fight, yeah.
And the fact that they actually did it in a legitimate swamp,
Yes.
like for me, it's like gators,
Gators.
snakes.
Snakes.
No.
No, thank you. I mean, that first introduced Alexa Bliss to the Braun thing. That really saw the first inkling of Alexa Bliss.
And then,
Yeah.
the match, the swamp fight, you see Bray get tossed in there, and you're like, well, I guess this feud's done.
And then he comes back as the
And
Fiend.
then you see the Fiend rise up, and you're just like, okay.
Okay, here we go. And then they had the match. And did you like how he changed Braun again? Haircut and just him being this new monster with the green shirt.
Yeah.
It worked. Elliot, again, the characters worked perfectly. And I mean, again, introducing Roman to that also worked. But I mean, the big one comes like from what we see from this again, doing what they can during the COVID era. Randy Orton, the start of that with the Inferno match too, and that led to the WrestleMania that year. And yeah, Alexa turning on Bray. Randy Orton hits the RKO 1, 2, 3. Of
After
course,
a minute and a half.
but not even that. I want to take you back to this one. Alexa Bliss pinning Randy Orton with the return of the Burnt Fiend also was very interesting, and what they did there. What were your initial thoughts of how we got to the Randy Orton feud? And then, yeah, I know I can see you shaking your head over. I hated it. I hated it.
And, this killed, and Bray even said this in an interview, that this killed the Fiend. Like, this is what did it.
Mm-hmm.
If it hadn't ended like this, maybe he would have stayed as the Fiend. Maybe, when he came back at Extreme Rules, maybe we would have had the Fiend again.
For me, like what also kind of kills it off too is if you remember, like after the Mania match, people just chanted bullshit, and they were not having it. They were not having that match, and rightfully so. I mean, like you mentioned, like after this, he was gone. Like he was legit gone right after this, and everybody was shocked to read, WWE has come to terms on the release of Wyndham Rotunda Bray Wyatt, and like you're like, are you kidding me right now? Like literally, are you kidding me right now?
And they said that there were health issues. So honestly, I wonder if even back then it was, the heart issues.
I mean, for me, you also have to think of from a stance of the heart issues. You have to look at it from a stance of he just lost Brody Lee, who he was very close with. So he was dealing with a lot. And I think, like we just mentioned the earlier promo of just him coming back, but the Extreme Rules match and the Extreme Rules return of just everything from the Firefly Funhouse puppets coming to life, him coming through the door, I'm here. Like that was probably one of the best returns ever. It really was.
I remember it happening, and with Bray, and they do it, and we get the return. And I think it was right after the Lions Den,
Yeah, with Matt Riddle and Seth Rollins with Daniel Cormier. Yep.
and the lights go out, and you're thinking like, okay, what is this? And then you just see like the different aspects show up in the puppets. You're thinking like, no way.
Right. Well, the
And
code was the best. Let's just even say this first. The QR code that led to all this was the best thing that they did.
exactly, you're thinking it's Bray.
Yeah.
Like the whole White Rabbit thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like whoever came up with that, whether it was Bray or Triple H or whoever.
Perfect.
Now it was said that even before Vince was forced out, that there was already negotiations with Bray Wyatt to come back. And they said because Vince did have a lot of respect for him as a person. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, and it doesn't really matter. But that whole thing, and then you hear he's got the whole world in his hands,
Mm-hmm.
and if you look back to that entrance and the door, that was a nod to Brody Lee. That was a tribute to Brody.
The exalted one. Yep.
And to me, and he incorporated that into his entrance. Like they even put it in a freaking video game.
Well, and they also did. Well, also, what I like the added touch of that to go to your point when he did the yeah, 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 even worked perfect.
And to see him come back was full circle. And then we got the promo on SmackDown.
Dude,
And
right here, right at the
you
heart.
see him in tears because, you know, here's somebody who, again, by all intents and purposes, I don't care if you're a third, second, whatever generation superstar, it does not matter. He is somebody that should not have made it. By conventional standards, he never should have been there.
I think for me, like we talk about, like you've mentioned this many times on our show, like makes you feel like that pulled on everybody's heartstrings.
You know, the best promos are ones that make you feel something, anything, joy, anger, whatever. You know, look at promos like MJF's shoot promo from about a year or so back.
Yeah, fire me, UF and Mark.
That made you feel something. You know, you think Mick Foley's promo after the steel cage match where Terry Funk and him got beat up.
Yep.
That was something. Then this one just made you feel.
For me, like then this whole started the whole Uncle Howdy thing, and you saw the mask and just everything. Really, like he's trying to control his rage, which I'm going to ask you because this was his final feud that he had. Out of everybody to be the final feud, now mind you, LA Knight had just come off from the Max Dupree thing with the Maximum Male Models. He's finally back to being himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, your thoughts of Bray Wyatt and LA Knight? The feud.
You know, honestly, I enjoyed the feud. You know, because you look at what you have. LA Knight is your kind of flashy, braggadocious kind of character. Very bright, very loud. Bray, to me, Bray Wyatt he's the Undertaker, he's Mick Foley, he's Jake the Snake Roberts wrapped in one. That's who he was. And it worked. Now the pitch black match, that was never going to be good.
For me, like I understand the sponsorship and the partnership with Mountain Dew. I really do. For me, with the short time that they had, I mean, the monster, the whole glow in the dark thing that worked.
That was cool.
That was very cool. Late night putting him through the table, the popcorn flying off the table, the kendo sticks. For what it was not the worst thing I saw, but it was just like I mentioned, it was what it was supposed to accomplish what it did. And then the Uncle Howdy and the puppets and everything diving off there worked. So for what it was fine.
Now, it's been said that was going to lead to that was supposed to lead to the new Wyatt family.
Right.
We were supposed to, I think it was supposed to be obviously Uncle Howdy, which I think was, is. I wonder who it is.
Who it is. No, you got to believe who it is.
I believe it may have been Bodell. I guess for one appearance, I guess it was Dolph Ziggler.
Wow.
Because, at that point, mask, long hair, it really...
Yeah.
it could have been anybody, behind. I think ultimately it was Bo Dallas.
Yes.
Alexa Bliss was supposed to be part of it.
I mean, they started that before she got pregnant. You saw like the interaction with Bianca going into that Rumble. So yes.
Eric Young had been re-signed,
And then just it's
I
not.
think it was supposed to be him. I think they were going to bring back Mike Bennett.
I mean, everybody thought it was going to be Vincent and the other gentleman who's in Ring of Honor now. I can't think of the partner for some reason, but yeah, Vincent and the other guy. Eric Young, like, dude, coming off of Sanity, that would have worked. Like, you know what I'm saying?
He even said that he was supposed to do something with Bray Wyatt,
which would have been great. Like, I think it would have worked perfectly. It's something that we could talk about what could have been, but I think, like I mentioned here, perfect last feud. But now I'm gonna say, if it would have came into fruition, Bray Wyatt and Bobby Lashley. We saw some vignettes, and we saw him on Attack Uncle Howdy, and then of course Bray was gone after this. But yo, were you looking forward to Bray and Bobby Lashley?
Honestly, since I'm a fan of both guys,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
I'm curious to see where they would have gone. I was actually very curious.
personally, I would have rather seen Brock versus Bray. I think that would have been something, but I guess Brock kind of said, "Nah,
I'm not doing the spooky stuff.
not doing it, player."
No. And then we got him and Omos, which is actually not bad. But
yeah. And that gets shit on so much, but you know what? What do you expect when a guy that's over 7 foot tall, like Omos, is not going to be doing a Hurricane Ranas? He's not going to be doing 450 centons off the top rope.
Nope. But that's the thing too, man. It's just it's crazy to think, especially with that WrestleMania, like what could have been with Bray and Bobby. And I think whatever it would have been, I know he would have made it work, much like everything. And one other thing I have to mention, so we just did the retrospective here. If not, and nobody's ever seen it, like their final night in NXT, where he's talking about, if you need to find me, you know where to find me, and just follow the buzzards. All you have to do is follow the buzzards. The Wyatt family's last night in NXT. Now, early feuds. I don't know if you watched at the time, but I remember Harper and Rowan had a great feud with Oliver Gray and somebody named Neville. Whatever happened to that guy? I heard he was a bastard. For the NXT, for the NXT tag.
Adrian Neville, he's an elite wrestler.
He is. He's very much an elite. You know what I'm saying? A red arrow, if you will. That arrow of his. Oh, but no, I think at the time period where Adrian Neville and Oliver Gray, then Oliver Gray got released. They were the tag champs. Then Adrian Neville and Bo Dallas were a team. Adrian Neville and Corey Graves were a very short team. Did you like that the Wyatt? Then obviously the Wyatt family would win the NXT tag titles from them. But did you like that early incarnation of them going for the tag titles? I know it was a short run NXT. What'd you think?
There's a quote that he said. He said, there's three kinds of people in this world. He said, there are those that dream, never get off the couch.
Yep.
There are those that dream and fail. And there are those that dream and change the world.
It's like, I'm ready to change the world.
And that's what he did. You talk about the future and where it goes. And this person's been compared to Bray Wyatt. I'm talking about Joe Gacy.
Oof. I mean, he's on fire right now in NXT with the Schism, the Dyad.
Loving what he's doing.
He's one of the best right now, folks. If you've not seen it, him and the Creed brothers and the Schism and the Dyad, like, it works.
And Ava Raine, which, I smell what she's cooking.
I do. I mean, the daughter of The Rock. That I love the fact that Joe Gacy, and I mean, he even did the interview recently with Ryan Satin. He's like, I'm not trying to be Bray Wyatt, but I'm just like, I think he was very flattered that, he was being compared to Bray Wyatt. And he's like, that's what people think of when you think of the dark side. But I mean, he's really coming to his own as the cult leader, as someone who's like very easy to poison the minds and, bring people out there. It works. I mean, the first time I saw the promo with Bray Wyatt for NXT, and I mean, we just mentioned their NXT run there and the infamous promo you mentioned, but like with the hands and he's talking to people that really aren't there and he's got his arms out, it's different. You've never seen anything like that before.
Exactly. And there's also, believe it's on YouTube, where he does this vignette where he's talking about, Sister Abigail told him to go out, and walk. And he said he found a man with yellow eyes. And I think it was called Bray Wyatt Ghost Story.
Oh, yes. Don't you understand, baby? You are the man in the wood.
You are the man with the yellow eyes. And that was the basis for The Fiend.
Yes. And that's a lot of things people don't realize, like the Easter eggs that he put in earlier to where we got to there. And I mean, I do have to mention this, and there's a couple final things before we do come to the close of this show. And I want to bring this to your attention because it's great to see like in the real world. But what's also great about the video game side of things is that brings great storylines too. And now he was featured in a lot in the video games, right? Like for storylines, the Buzz feud in WWE 2K19, which I thought was really good, like how they incorporated that in the compound. If you remember, because the first video game he was in was WWE 12, he was involved like in the early stages of the Jacob Cass storyline. Were you a fan of that, or what were your thoughts of him in the video?
And also,
yes, go ahead.
WWE 2K22, there in the My Rise, the career mode, there was supposed to be a significant storyline with the Fiend, but of course, he'd been cut, and I will say this: everyone, talks about the AEW game. The first AEW game was WWE 2K22.
Yes.
Half the roster on that game had been released before the game even was out. Except for people that WWE said, yeah, pull this person. Adam Cole got pulled, even though his the coding was still there and you could basically find him.
Right.
But again, it's nice that people can still have that, and it's unfortunately, there, people think, oh, just because somebody passed, Hall of Fame.
That's what a lot of people are saying, that they should put Bray in the Hall of Fame next year.
I could honestly, I could see it.
Me too. I mean, look at Eddie Guerrero. Right after he passed, he was in the Hall of Fame the next year.
And honestly, I could see them putting the Wyatt family in, as a group.
That is very interesting. Yes, put Bray Wyatt in. They could do both, much like they've done with the Horsemen and DX and all that. You could put Bray Wyatt single, and then you put the Wyatt family in as a whole. Yep, the original Wyatt family, the first.
Exactly. Harper, Rowan.
Bray Wyatt.
Sure, Braun.
Well, I mean, we're not there yet with Braun, but Eric, I don't know. I mean,
he's still got to control his narrative a little bit.
Jesus, you gotta bring that up. But no, I think to really kind of just say about everything that we've talked about in this episode, Bray Wyatt was one of a kind. He was a creative genius. He brought us so many moments and memories. He brought us so many moments and memories that made us feel, and he will truly be missed and dearly be missed. And as we've said, thank you, Bray Wyatt, for the moments and memories, and thank you for what you did for pro wrestling.
There will never be another Bray Wyatt, and what Wyndham Rotunda gave us, he was somebody who had a genuine love for the business, for the fans, because at the end of the day, they're all still fans. He was a fan.
He was
and as I said earlier, it's sad that he's gone, and knowing what could have been, but at the end of the day, he will always be one of the best talkers, and people are going to be studying his promos and his work.
It's the subtleties, intricacies, and nuances, and what I love about what you brought up there. WWE put on their YouTube channel recently as to honor Bray Wyatt, from the WWE developmental documentary where they were talking about FCW, just Bray during promo class and really developing what we saw. It was
so there was a story, I think, I'll end with this, that when they were in developmental, he got jury duty.
Mm-hmm.
He went in full costume.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, we're talking like the Max Cady, the Hawaiian shirt. He went in his ring gear as Bray Wyatt. And from what I'd heard, he did, he was answered, Wyndham Rotunda, but he did it in character.
That's dedication if you're doing that at jury duty.
Yeah. And again, you talk about people that, are committed to their gimmick. You're never going to have another one.
You aren't. And I think for those that enjoyed our trip down memory lane and really just talk about how much Bray Wyatt meant to us and to a lot of people that do listen to this and who do enjoy and watch professional wrestling, we hope you enjoyed this. And I'm glad that we got to discuss this, man, because we had actually, it's funny because Daniel and I, every time we do these shows, man, I love the topics that we do and really touch upon. This was going to be an episode later on in the series, but with the light of everything, we brought it to you now, and we hope you enjoyed it. But there's one thing that we didn't talk about, Bray, because we're going to talk about in the next episode. We mentioned Husky Harris briefly with his NXT run and being mentored by Cody Rhodes and the short stint there. He was in the new Nexus, and
I guess, and we have to You know,
Yeah.
to me, that's the elephant in the room, and again, that's going to be next time. But when Bray Wyatt first got to the main roster, you had Husky Harris chance. But you know what? What he did, what he created, he basically went to every single person that ever chanted Husky Harris at him when he was Bray Wyatt and
That's very true. Like,
got them to shut the hell up.
that's very true because, folks, what Daniel's talking about here, if you remember when he first beat up Kane and they're doing this by the steps and they're doing the signature pose, people were chanting Husky Harris at him.
But you know what? They're not laughing now.
No, they are not. And we are all remembering him and really just enjoying the legacy and the life of Bray Wyatt. And
He
like
had the whole world in his hands.
beautifully said, my friend. And next episode, we're going to be talking about him even more, the rise and fall of the Nexus. We are talking about the original Nexus, the new Nexus, the break off into the core, and just, yeah, if you're not Nexus, you're against us, Daniel. That's our next episode.
And yes, even referring to Phil Brooks.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that too, because that was CM Punk's last thing before the pipe bomb. So I cannot wait for a much lighter and lighthearted and more, funner episode. And I don't. This was fun, but it's also very hard when someone who you truly did look up to and really respect and love, and they taken us too soon. And rest in peace, Bray Wyatt. We love you, and we love each and every one of you that listen to us. And if you've not already subscribed to the channel, and Daniel, on a lighter note here,
Subscribe. What are you doing?
what the hell are you doing if you're not subscribed? It's because you should. Hit the bell, man. Hit a like. Give us a comment.
Pause the show right now, and then subscribe. There's like a little link right down there, right, and then right nearby there's also a nifty little bell.
Yeah.
So that when you click that bell, you'll get a notification anytime like upload something and you see our faces.
This is recommended for you, folks. We're recommending for you. Listen, click it.
Click it. What are you doing?
And what are you doing? Because Daniel is the focal point. We talked about the last series for Max, Promo Slam. You and Dazzy did your thing for the TV title. And now we are going. Oh, no, I'm sorry, not Promo Slam, All for One. And now we are here for you're part of Promo Series, man. It's you and Mo defending the Max Tag titles against the winner of the Blind Eliminator Tag tournament, and the winner stays on for the Knowledge title. So you were all up in that on Promo Series, my friend.
I am Max Wrestling.
And I'll be on that show as well in a open challenge promo exhibition. So I look forward to seeing who accepts my challenge. So we'll be competing.
It's what I do. And of course, let's not forget, whoever wins their world title, who's waiting in the wings?
It's either Moses or Cypher. Daniel's coming for you. So check that out.
Let's just say, to borrow a line from one of my favorite movie series,
Yes.
I want to play a game.
Beautifully said. So check out Dan on Promo Series. And speaking of Promo Series, if you want to go back and watch Promo Series, Dan and I had a great bout last year at Promo Series. Go back and watch that bout because it was fun. You know what we do? It's great. Hell yeah. And links will be in the description. So
Again, subscribe.
D Crimmins one on Instagram. Stephen Mike Show, SM Show 1, MCL92, Larkin _92, M Larkin MB, Mike Larkin on YouTube, Mike Larkin 92. Subscribe, enjoy.
And click the bell.
And click the bell. Click that goddamn bell. You can ring my bell, ring my bell. And just thank you all for listening. Bray Wyatt, we love you. And we'll see you on the other side. It's not see you later. We'll just see
you for now.
See you for now. All righty, folks. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on Uncaged.